I was between the ages of 14 and 17 years old, I ran a small babysitting and dog watching service for a few of the people that lived on my street. A lot of them worked late, and I discovered I could make a little extra money by watching after their kids until they got home. This was particularly convenient for me because I had to watch my younger sister after school anyways, so the kids would all just come back to our house and play in the yard or do their homework for a few hours till their parents got home. Now, one thing that I tried and quickly realized it was too much responsibility was babysitting overnight. Thankfully, it only happened twice, but the second time was something I would never forget and was what inevitably caused me to stop babysitting altogether. You see, one of the families 2 houses down from mine had a wedding to go out of state, so they asked if I would watch their son Cody, and he was one of the most well-behaved kids I had ever seen in my life, so it really wasn't a problem. And for the most part, the entire day went smoothly after Cody's parents left. We watched some morning cartoons and had some breakfast and lunch before going outside so we could run around with the rest of the kids. And then when it was time for bed, the kid was out like a light. After making sure that he was asleep, I made my way back into the living room to watch some TV before falling asleep. But even after a smooth day of babysitting, I was totally worn out, so I ended up passing out on the couch almost immediately. But that didn't last long. Something must have made a noise outside because I remember waking up in almost a panic state. I was breathing really heavily, and at first, I thought I might have just been having a bad dream, but that was when I heard the sound again. Only this time I was awake enough to realize what it was. It sounded like something was scratching at one of the windows down the hallway. I slowly got up from the couch and made my way down the hall as quietly as I could, but for some reason, that noise seemed to stop for a second. I stood in place and listened very closely when all of a sudden, I heard it again, and this time it was clearly coming from Cody's room. I grabbed onto the door handle and slowly cracked the door, but was surprised to find that he was still sleeping. I walked over to the window and checked it, but I couldn't see anything. And just when I was about to give up, that was when I heard it again, only this time it came from the master bedroom. This time the noise was loud enough to make Cody wake up, and he asked me what was going on. I told him that everything was going to be okay and that there was nothing to worry about, but I knew that I was wrong as I heard the unmistakable sound of someone climbing in through the window in the master bedroom. I walked over to Cody's door and closed it before clicking the locking mechanism into place. I turned back to him with my finger pressed to my lips, signaling for him not to say anything. As quietly as I could, I walked over to Cody and handed him my phone. I quietly whispered to Cody saying, "Once we get outside, call 911, okay?" And before he could answer, I walked him over to the window and opened it up. Knowing that whoever was breaking in and definitely heard that sound, I quickly helped Cody outside and then I myself followed him. By the time I got the phone from Cody, I was so proud of him because he already had it ringing. I let the police know the address and that I was babysitting when someone definitely broke in, and then I took Cody back to my house where my parents were waiting for us. The police showed up, and when they got there, they managed to arrest the person who broke in, though he tried to lie and claim that he thought it was his house and that he locked himself out. After that, we contacted Cody's parents and let them know that he would be staying at my house where my parents could watch over us until they got back, which was the first thing the following morning. As the oldest sibling in my family, it's been my job to babysit my 3 younger brothers and sister. Some days were definitely harder than others because they like to fight sometimes, but when Jake and Mason weren't being tortured by Carla, it really wasn't bad, and it was the least I could do to help my mom. After she left my stepdad, she made sure to do everything that she could to take care of us, and she nailed it, so I really didn't mind watching my siblings. That being said, some of the evenings that she had to work the night shift got pretty creepy, and while a lot of what happened during those nights was just a part of our imaginations running wild, I'll never forget one very real incident that caused my mom to stop working overnight. The apartment complex that we grew up in was typically a very clean place, and most of our neighbors seemed really nice and were all respectful of one another. But during the summer of '05, there was this guy that moved in a couple of apartments over from ours, and ever since he got there, all of the younger people started to feel pretty uncomfortable. We didn't know what it was, but there was multiple times where we would be hanging out and ended up talking about how it felt like this guy was always staring at us from his window, but there was no way to tell if he actually was. So at the end of the day, We just dropped it and slowly started hanging out around sections of the complex that weren't in view of his windows, like the basketball court. Now by that point, none of us had actually talked to this guy, but one day after school when I was watching my siblings, I called them all inside for dinner, and by that time it was already dark out, so I couldn't see them and had to call them by name, which was something that I ended up regretting. As soon as I called Carla's name, I heard a man's voice come from another apartment's front door say, "Carla? That's my sister's name." And before I knew it, the neighbor that made us all uncomfortable came outside and started walking over to me. "I never met another Carla," he said, which took me off guard because that's a weird topic to use to start up a conversation with a kid, and I was only 13 at the time. But honestly, I figured the guy was just being friendly and I couldn't quite place it, but I also felt like he was handicapped in a way considering the way he was slurring his words when he talked. Looking back on it though, I probably should have just realized that he was intoxicated, but I didn't, and I started to respond to him as he approached my apartment talking about my little sister's name. He just continued to say that he never met another Carla before, to which I responded by saying, "Yeah, it's a nice name. My mom picked it out," as I tried to look past him and into the parking lot hoping to see my siblings. And just as I was looking, Carla came running up, but she stopped as soon as she saw the man standing in our little pathway to the front door. I'll never forget that uneasy feeling that I got when he turned to her and said, "Oh, this must be the beautiful young Carla. Look how pretty you are." I gritted my teeth as I looked at Carla and could see the fear in her eyes. The man took a step toward her and went to place his hand on her head when I interrupted by telling her, "Dinner's ready. You should probably get inside and wash up." Carla gave me a thankful look and tried to make her way past the man and into the house, but he grabbed her by the shoulder to stop her and said, "Hang on. I thought we were talking." I didn't even think about what I was going to do next. I stepped out from the door, pulling his hand off of her arm, and pushed him back before ushering Carla into the house and closing the door behind us. Carla turned to me with tears in her eyes as I tried to assure her that everything was going to be okay. That was when I heard a loud bang on the door as the man tried to slam into it as he yelled from outside, "What's wrong with you? Is that how you treat someone that just wants to be friendly?" I told Carla to go hide in her room as I made my way over to the phone to call the police. As I was on the phone with them, I could hear the man calling out for Carla by name. I mean, there was something seriously wrong with this guy. After I got off the phone with the police who were on their way, I called Mr. Walters, who lived on the other side of the complex, and asked him to keep an eye out for Mason and Jake after I told him what was going on. The police showed up and began to question the man who was still standing in our driveway yelling at our apartment, and he was placed in handcuffs as soon as they ran his information. According to a report that was given out by the owners of the apartment in which they apologized, everyone learned that he was apparently a former sexual offender that never reported it, even though he was required to by law when he applied for the apartment. He was swiftly removed from the premises and he ended up losing the apartment, which I'm forever grateful for because I feel like he was specifically targeting my sister. When I was 16 years old, I needed to earn some money so that I could get a dress for prom that year, and one of my friends suggested that I should try my hand at babysitting, so that's exactly what I did. I found an app that I could download onto my phone that let you sign up and promote your service to families in your area that are looking for someone to babysit their kids. The app seemed really handy at first because I was able to set my available hours and my preferred rate of pay. It was sort of like setting up a social media profile but for babysitting. And let me tell you how surprised I was when I got my first official request. The request was from a woman named Kathy, and she was asking if I would be able to babysit her 8-year-old son for 4 hours that upcoming Saturday night. Now, my friend warned me not to do any night shifts on the weekend because clients can lie about how long they'll be out and stuff like that. But I really needed the money, so I decided to accept the offer anyways. After accepting the job on the app, I got in contact with a potential client over the phone and gave them a call just to iron out the details. But what threw me off was the fact that it sounded like a man answering the phone. When I asked for Kathy, they told me that she was making dinner for their son, and I was pretty sure I could hear a woman and kid in the background, so I just talked with him about the details and had the babysitting job officially set up. The rest of the week rolled by as usual, and once it hit 5 o'clock on Saturday, I had my mom drop me off at the client's house. My mom wanted to stay and meet them, but I thought that might seem unprofessional for some reason, though looking back on it, I wish I had told her to stay. My mom dropped me off and I walked up to the front door. I knocked on the door and waited for someone to answer, but no one came. I could see the lights on through the curtains in the front window, but as I listened, I couldn't hear anything inside. I knocked again, and this time I called out, "Hello, it's Mary from the babysitting service." But again, there was no response. I tried to look around, but it had already gotten dark by that point, and I couldn't really see anything. That's when it set in how quiet it was around me too. It was like I could hear a pin drop. And though that made it more terrifying, I'll forever be grateful that it was quiet. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to hear what sounded like a door close in the back of the house. I walked off the front porch and toward the driveway to peek around the side of the home, and as I got to the corner of the house, I froze. Creeping around from the back of the house, I could see a hooded figure that looked like a man slowly walking toward me. He noticed me just as I noticed him, and I tried to stay calm and let him know that I was there to babysit. But when he continued to walk forward without answering, I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I quickly turned and ran back down the driveway toward the dark road that my mom had driven me down. I fumbled in my sweatshirt pocket trying to pull my phone out as I continued to panic. By that point, I could hear the person behind me as they tried to chase me. Their footsteps kept progressively getting faster and louder. Thankfully, I managed to pull my phone out as I sprinted and yelled for Siri to call my mom. She answered right away and could tell that something was wrong as I begged her to come back for me. I don't know if it was the adrenaline or what, but I had never run that fast or for that long in my life, and thankfully somewhere along the way the man stopped chasing me. I'm not sure if it was because he couldn't keep up or because he knew that help was on the way. As soon as my mom picked me up, we contacted the police, though they said that there wasn't much they could do after they stopped by the house and no one answered. Supposedly, we didn't have enough to go on for them to simply search the place. All I could do at that point was report the client on the app and stay far away from that place.